Hello, welcome to my video demonstration of hard to figure out notions. It's always easier to see how notions work than it is to read about them. Probably the most asked about notions at the office are creative feet. People want to know how they work, if they will fit their machines, and how they decide which foot to order. So I decided to ask Clare Rowley to come and show you. Clare's been repairing all kinds of home sewing machines, industrial machines, sergers for the last 9 years. And out of this extensive experience, she's developed the creative feet. Clare, I'm so glad you're here to show everybody how they work. And I think the most exciting thing right now is that, as of today, Clare's developed feet to fit any zigzag sewing machine. So it's all yours, Clare.
Thank you so much for having me.
Clare, which foot are you going to demonstrate first?
I will begin by showing the Satinedge foot. This is the snap-on version of the Satinedge foot. Looks can be deceiving. Though this foot may appear to be like one you already have, it is unique. The fact that you can adjust the guide and the pin left to right enables you to select a wide variety of zigzag widths. This foot has a deep channel which allows your fabric to feed smoothly when doing a satin stitch. This pin keeps the fabric flat, which gives an even zigzag width. The pin is connected to a ski-shaped guide. Other feet with guides do not have this curved edge, which causes problems. Now I will begin. I'm sewing the edge of a napkin and I am reaching the dreaded edge. You see how easily the fabric feeds and how I don't need to assist it? This foot was designed for a blind and deaf student that I taught how to sew. So even you can turn a perfect corner and do a straight edge. You stop, lift the presser foot, pull the fabric off the little metal pin, turn your fabric. Then you simply bring the needle down right on the edge of the stitching line that you have already completed and begin sewing. The fabric will not become stuck. That is because there is an extra amount of plastic on the bottom of this foot which lines up with your feed dogs. Once again, little or no guiding. And now you're probably saying, but I can do this on my serger. But if you've ever tried to do scallops, you'll know that this is virtually impossible. Watch and be amazed. Now I'm going to turn the corner once again, making sure that my needle penetrates the fabric right next to the stitching line that we just completed. And this will require some guiding. Now you will notice as I approach the fabric's edge, because of the ski-shaped guide, it will not catch the fabric's edge. Instead, it will just ride right up over it. Now, once you reach the edge of the scallop, you're going to go into the fabric the width of your zigzag stitch. Then you lift the presser foot, pull the fabric back off the little metal pin, and turn your fabric around. Bring the needle down so that it is going to cover the stitching line that you did previously, and then you begin sewing. This foot also does beautiful applique with an open toe for easy view. The pin prevents the fabric from tunneling and eliminates puckers. The guide helps to keep you right on the edge of the fabric, so you no longer have to get really close to your work. It is now a relaxing experience to do machine applique. Now, if you've ever done machine applique or machine embroidery before, you'll know that you use many different colors of thread, and there's usually nowhere to put the ones that you're just working on for your project. So they're usually laying all over your table and getting right in your way. That is why I've created the thread dispenser. This product holds many different spools of thread. Not only does it store the thread, but it also feeds it into your sewing machine. So you no longer have to take the spool off your thread rack and then place it onto your sewing machine. As I've been sewing, I've been feeding the threads off of these two vertical spool holders. Directly above them is a little eye hook which forces the thread to unwrap off the spool. Rayon threads tend to twist and not come off the spool properly, and so you get a result of a lot of looping on your project. And if you've ever done machine applique or machine embroidery, you know that this is not desirable. So what I do is I wrap it around the eye hook 2 times and then swing it around one of the little vertical posts on the top and then feed it into the machine, and it works similar to an industrial threading system, and that is why the industrial machines don't seem to have as much trouble with the rayon threads. You can store many different bobbins, up to 48 bobbins on the top, or you can combine it by using your thread storage. Not only can you store your thread, but you can then feed your thread directly from this into your sewing machine. So you have up to 6 spools of thread on the top, 2 on the 2 vertical, and 3 on these 3 slanted posts. Also, you can use regular cones of thread that is frequently used in your overlock machines and industrial sewing machines as well. And there you have it, the thread dispenser. The Satinedge foot also does invisible applique. You can use it on quilting, and when you do the quilting technique, you use the invisible wonder thread. Another use would be for an invisibly stitched patch pocket on jackets. In that situation, you will use a regular thread to match the fabric. Each of these is done with a very narrow zigzag. And please remember to not allow the needle to strike the pin. It is to the left of the pin. I'll have a wonderful time and create beautiful quilts. Another place you'll use this foot is for top stitching. To ensure perfectly straight stitches, be sure to use a sharp needle. Can you imagine sewing a pocket on this quickly with little or no guiding and having it be perfect?
Claire, that foot is so fantastic. I just wish I'd had it 15 years ago when I made this blouse that had tons of top stitching on it. I did just use it a couple of weeks ago when I made my red ultra suede blazer with lap seam construction. It was such a godsend. I called you up and I had to say how wonderful it was. Now, what are you going to show us next?
I'm going to show us everybody the pearls and piping foot now.
Wonderful.
This is the pearls and piping foot. It has a deep channel on the underside of the presser foot. What makes this so wonderful is that because the guide is in front and behind of the zigzag opening, you do not have to guide the beads at all. Because of this, you have free motion to direct the fabric in whatever design you choose. I recommend using the wonder thread in the needle and lingerie thread in the bobbin. The reason I recommend lingerie thread in the bobbin is to encourage the top thread to stay underneath the fabric. And now I will show you the 4mm wide beads. You simply slide them into the foot, bring the presser foot down, select a wider zigzag than you used on the smaller beads, and begin sewing. Once again, you do not have to hold the beads or assist them in any way. You can also use this side of the presser foot as a guide to do multiple rows evenly spaced apart. Because all the way around the foot it is contoured, it will also not dig into the nap of sweaters, so you're able to sew beads right on the top of any really loosely woven or thick fabric, and it works equally well on your really sheer fabrics, as you can see here. Because beads are slippery and they are heavy when they're laying on your lap or on the table, they tend to want to slip off the table. So I string my small beads through the eye hook that holds your thread on the thread dispenser, and my larger beads I wrap around one of the spindles that takes the weight off of the beads and enables you to have no stress at all when they're feeding through the machine, which prevents puckering of your fabric. You can also do these beautiful rhinestones. Once again, with no guiding of the rhinestone. I'm once again using the thread dispenser to hold the rat tail cording because it is extremely slippery. And you can do couching using this rat tail cording or any flexible cord that you desire. See how easy it is? And now, using a straight stitch, I am sewing through a very heavy 1/4 inch metallic cording. Once again, I have free movement. As a helpful hint, if you notice, the end of these decorative cords tend to fray. What you can do before you cut the end, secure by using a stud or a rhinestone and hold it securely in place. And now for the practical side of the pearls and piping foot, you're able to match the exact color of any fabric and create your own piping. You're no longer limited to what the fabric store has available to you. It's simple and it's easily guided through the channel underneath the presser foot. You simply line up your raw edges of fabric and sew. In the past, you used to have to sew your piping down to one side of your fabric. After sewing it, then sew it to the opposite piece and hope to cover any stitching line that you may have made mistakes on. Now we can sew them all together in one step. Simply place the fabrics underneath the presser foot, line up your needle so that it is as close to the piping edge as possible, and begin sewing. And there you have perfect piping. Corded pin tucking is very popular in Western wear today, but you can also use this technique to create elegant accents to French hand sewing by machine. You can buy cordings in a variety of colors, lay them underneath a very sheer cotton batiste, and then your pin tucks are not only raised, but they have a variety of different really subtle pastel colors underneath the fabric. Not only is it attractive, but it's extremely easy. You do not have to hold the cording, and even though I can't see it, it is going to follow along the pattern that I choose by manipulating my fabric. So you can see it is simply laying underneath the fabric. And now I'll begin. Now I am using the Wonder thread in the top and the bobbin, because not only can you use this technique to create corded pin tucks, but because I've used a twin needle to sew this, the cording is recessed into the fabric, which makes a very nice decorative effect.
Claire, that pin tuck is amazing. It's almost standing up as high as the one with the cording underneath it. Why is that?
Well, first of all, it's because there is such a high groove in the presser foot. If I simply pinch the fabric together, it lifts up into the groove, and so the pin tuck will rise up higher. Also, I've switched to the lingerie thread. This thread tends to stretch as it sews, and when you put it in the bobbin, it tends to pull your two needle threads together, which forces your pin tuck to rise and stay very tall.
Amazing. Now, I'm sure you're going to show us some amazing things with the sequin and ribbon foot.
Yes, I am. This is the snap-on version of the Sequins and ribbon foot. It has a uniquely designed adjustable guide which feeds any flat 1/4 inch trim or elastic. You have free movement and do not need to hold or guide any of the trims that you are sewing. Because the opening in the presser foot is narrower than the overall width of the rickrack, we have to trim the beginning of the rickrack to get it started into the foot. Once you have trimmed the edge, slide it into the foot. Be sure to have fabric underneath the presser foot when sliding it in, or the trim will have a tendency to slide into your zigzag opening. If you have ever tried sewing rickrack, you will notice that after you wash the rickrack, it tends to curl up on the sides. So your next thought might be to use a double needle. But if you use a double needle, one needle will be on the rickrack and one needle will fall off the rickrack the entire time that it is sewing. So your next thought might be, well, I'll try using a zigzag stitch and time the zigzag to hit each zig and each zag. Well, if you've tried this, you know that it is impossible. So what is going to happen with this foot is actually extremely phenomenal. We're going to use a twin needle. After sewing this and washing it, it will not curl up. Because what's going to happen is as the rickrack is feeding into the opening, it is moving itself in a zigzag motion. The needles will remain in a straight up and down movement, and the rickrack will be sure to always be placed underneath those needles. Now watch and be amazed. Because rickrack is woven, you can go around in a circular motion. And before, it was just hard to sew it straight. And now watch how easy it is to sew ribbon down using a twin needle, sewing both sides of the ribbon down at once, not needing to glue it in place before sewing, and your stitching line will be perfect when you're finished. And it works just as well with satin ribbons. There are two different ways of sewing sequins on. First, you can use a zigzag stitch. If you do this, however, you must have at least a 6.5 millimeter wide width, because the sequin is 6 millimeters wide. However, if your sewing machine does not have a zigzag wide enough to surround the sequins, you can use a straight stitch. You must, however, use a leather size 80-12 needle when sewing through sequins to prevent skip stitches or breaking of needles or sequins. You will notice that after you've used the zigzag technique, your zigzag stitches are covering the sequins. Simply wiggle the fabric back and forth, and the stitches hide underneath the sequins. As you can see, the straight stitch technique is also very attractive, and it is necessary, even if you do have a wide zigzag, to use the straight stitch whenever you want to do multiple rows of sequins, as seen on this beautiful t-shirt, which only took a matter of minutes to complete. When sewing elastic, I recommend you use the lingerie thread in both top and bobbin. Also, you should use a 90-14 stretch needle. Now, if you've ever sewn elastic flat before, you'll all be able to relate to the feeling that I have, to where I feel as though I'm having a relationship with my sewing machine. The reasons for this is, number one, as you stretch the elastic towards you, it doesn't want to stay underneath the presser foot. Now, I have not sewn a stitch and my needle is not down, and you see how well the elastic hole is held underneath the foot. Next, you don't have to worry about lifting your elastic, which can cause needle breakage. And you don't have to worry about guiding it left to right. The tunnel makes sure that the elastic is always right underneath the needle. Now, all I have to be concerned with is meeting up the marks that you normally mark your elastic in 4 equal parts. You mark your fabric in 4 equal parts. You simply stretch your marks together and sew. No longer do I have to pull from behind. These two accessory guides extend the features of the existing sequins and ribbon foot. You are now able to sew from 1/8 inch wide flat trims to 3/8 inch wide trims with these two products. You'll notice, though, on the 1/8 inch accessory guide, there is a second hole. And now I will show you what that is for and how easily these attachments fit onto the existing foot. The accessory guide simply removes by turning the screw. You just keep turning it until the accessory guide will just fall off into your hand. You place the nut inside the slot on the accessory guide and then screw it right back on. You'll notice on the bottom of the foot that there is a clear plastic post, and then there is a guide slot on the accessory guide. You just continue screwing that on and lining those up, and it will be positioned properly when you're done. You will notice that the diameter of this trim is much wider than the opening of the hole on this presser foot. And so I'm going to use this wonderful threader called the one-step needle threader to feed it into the hole. Once you've inserted the cording into the threader, then you simply slide the threader into the hole and pull it through. Once you have that done, bring the presser foot down using a zigzag stitch, and now you simply maneuver the fabric you're able to cross over what you have already done. And there you have an elegant accent for the lapel of any jacket, or just about anywhere you would like